They're listening. Subscribe, like, comment, and share with your friends and family.
Jason and I had been planning this camping trip for months, 3 days deep in the Cascade Wilderness, just the two of us and miles of untouched forest. We'd been hiking since dawn and finally reached our campsite around 4 p.m., a secluded clearing surrounded by towering pines that blocked out most of the fading sunlight. We were setting up our tents when I heard it, footsteps crunching through the underbrush, getting closer, and then a voice, rough, desperate, calling out from the darkening woods. "Hey! Hello! Is anyone out there?" I straightened up from hammering in a tent stake and exchanged a glance with Jason. His eyebrows went up in surprise. In a day and a half of camping, we hadn't seen or heard another soul. The isolation was part of the appeal. This section of the Cascades was notorious for being off the beaten path, the kind of place where you could go days without crossing paths with another hiker. The voice called out again, closer now. "Please, I need help." A man stumbled into view at the edge of our clearing, emerging from between two massive Douglas firs. He looked to be in his late 40s, maybe early 50s, with a gaunt face and hollow eyes that seemed too large for his skull. His clothes were rumpled and dirty, flannel shirt partially untucked, cargo pants with mud stains on the knees. His hair stuck up at odd angles like he'd been running his hands through it compulsively. He moved with this jerky, erratic energy that immediately put me on edge, but I pushed the feeling down. The guy was clearly in distress. "Thank God," he said, breathing hard as he approached. "I didn't think I'd find anyone out here." "You okay?" I asked, stepping forward. Jason stayed where he was, one hand still gripping the tent pole. "No, I'm not okay." The man wiped his face with a trembling hand. "My name's Earl. Earl Harris. I was hiking with my group and we got separated. I've been searching for hours and I can't find them anywhere." "Separated how?" Jason's voice was flat, neutral. I recognized that tone. It was the one he used when he was being deliberately careful, when he didn't trust something. Earl gestured vaguely back toward the trees. "We were doing a day hike, just exploring some of the side trails. I stopped to take a picture and when I turned around, they were gone. I called out but nobody answered. I've been trying to retrace our route but everything looks the same out here. These damn trees all look identical." I felt a pang of sympathy. Getting separated from your group in wilderness this dense was genuinely dangerous, especially with night coming on. "How many people are we talking about?" I asked. 3, no, 4. 4 people total, including me. Earl's eyes darted between Jason and me, like he was trying to gauge our reaction. 2 guys and a woman. We came out here yesterday morning, we're planning to camp for a few nights. "What are their names?" Jason asked. Earl hesitated for just a fraction of a second. Dave and Mike. Or Matt. One of them is Mike or Matt, I can never remember which. And the woman's name is Sarah. Jason shot me a look that said really? But I ignored it. People got flustered when they were panicking. Maybe Earl wasn't great with names. That didn't make him a liar. "Where's your gear?" Jason pressed. "Your pack, your water, your map." Earl looked down at himself like he'd just noticed he was empty-handed. I left it. Back at our camp. I thought I'd only be gone for a minute to find them. I didn't think." He trailed off, rubbing his face again. "Look, I know this seems weird, but I'm freaking out here. I've been walking in circles for hours. Can you guys help me? Just for a little while?" We could search together, call out, maybe they'll hear us if there's more voices. I could feel Jason's eyes boring into the side of my head. I knew what he was thinking, that this didn't add up, that something felt off. But what was I supposed to do, tell this guy to get lost? If his group really was out there somewhere, getting more lost or injured while we stood around debating whether his story checked out, I'd never forgive myself. We can help for maybe 30 minutes, I said, making the decision. But then it'll be too dark to search safely. If we don't find them by then, we should head back and contact rangers in the morning. Relief washed over Earl's face so intensely it was almost unsettling. Thank you. Jesus, thank you so much. I thought I was going to have to spend the night out here alone. You have a flashlight? Jason asked. His tone made it clear he already knew the answer. No, I told you, I left everything. You can use one of ours. I walked to my pack and pulled out my backup headlamp, tossing it to Earl. He caught it awkwardly, fumbling it between his hands before getting it situated on his head. The elastic band was too loose and it sat crooked, the light pointing off to the side. Jason pulled me aside while Earl adjusted the headlamp. Mike, he said quietly. This is bullshit. What do you mean? Come on. You can't remember your friend's name? And who goes hiking without any gear, even for just a minute? And look at his boots. Jason gestured subtly toward Earl's feet. Those are barely dirty. If he's been searching for hours through this forest, they should be covered in mud and pine needles. I looked. Jason was right, Earl's hiking boots were scuffed and worn, but relatively clean. Too clean for someone who'd supposedly been thrashing through underbrush in a panic. Maybe he's just a clean freak, I said, even as doubt crept into my voice. Maybe he sticks to trails. There are no trails where he said he came from. That's all dense forest. Jason's jaw was tight. I don't like this. Look, it's 30 minutes. If we don't find anything, we come back. But I can't just leave someone who might actually need help. I put a hand on Jason's shoulder. I know you've got a bad feeling, but we'll be fine. We stick together, we keep our wits about us. 30 minutes. Jason stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. Your help everyone complex is going to get us killed one day. Dramatic much? Just remember I said that. He walked past me to grab his own headlamp. Let's get this over with. We gathered around Earl, who was bouncing on his heels with nervous energy. The light from his crooked headlamp swept across the trees in erratic arcs as he moved. Which direction were you heading when you got separated? I asked. Earl pointed northeast, deeper into the forest. That way. We were following this ridgeline, I think. There was a creek bed we crossed and then we went uphill for a while. Okay. We'll head that direction and call out as we go. You lead the way since you know where you've already searched. Earl nodded eagerly and started walking. Jason and I fell in behind him, our headlamps creating overlapping pools of light on the forest floor. The temperature was dropping now that the sun was mostly down, and the shadows between the trees seemed to deepen and multiply with each passing minute. Dave! Earl shouted into the forest. Sarah! Mike! Can you hear me? His voice echoed off the trees and died away into silence. No response. We walked for maybe 10 minutes, Earl leading us on what seemed like a random path through the undergrowth. He'd stop occasionally and say something like, I think they went this way, or, this looks familiar, but there was no consistency to it. We'd veer left, then double back, then head uphill, then down again. I started to notice that Earl wasn't moving like someone who was lost and confused. He was moving with purpose, with confidence, like he knew exactly where he was going. "How long ago did you get separated?" Jason asked. He'd been mostly silent, just watching Earl with this cold, analytical expression. "Maybe 4 hours. 5. Earl didn't turn around. Lost track of time. "And in 4 or 5 hours of searching, you never thought to go back to your camp and grab supplies? Or wait there in case they returned?" Earl's steps faltered slightly. "I told you," I panicked. "I wasn't thinking straight." "Where's your camp?" "Back that way." Earl waved vaguely behind us. "How far?" "I don't know, couple miles maybe." Jason let out a sharp breath through his nose. I could feel him getting more agitated, the suspicion rolling off him in waves. I was starting to feel it too, that prickling sensation at the back of your neck when something is fundamentally wrong but you can't quite put your finger on what. We came to a small clearing and Earl stopped, looking around with exaggerated confusion. I thought. I could have sworn this is where we were when I last saw them. "There's no sign anyone else has been here," Jason said flatly. "No footprints, no disturbed vegetation, nothing. It's been hours, maybe the wind." "There's no wind tonight." Earl turned to face us, and in the harsh LED glare of our headlamps, his face looked different. Less panicked. More calculating. The desperation that had been in his eyes at our campsite had faded into something else, something I couldn't quite read. "Are you guys always this suspicious of people who need help?" he asked. "Only when their story doesn't make sense," Jason shot back. "My story makes perfect sense. I got lost, I found you, I asked for help. What's not to believe? The part where you can't remember your friends' names. The part where you left all your gear. The part where we've been walking in circles and you keep changing direction." Jason took a step forward. "Who are you really? What's your actual story?" For a moment, nobody moved. The forest around us was completely silent, no bird calls, no rustling leaves, nothing. Just the sound of our breathing and the faint hum of insects. Then Earl smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that made my blood run cold. "My actual story," he said softly. "My actual story is that you two should have minded your own business." And that's when I heard it, footsteps in the darkness beyond our lights. Multiple sets of footsteps, moving through the trees, circling our position. We weren't alone anymore. We'd never really been alone. The footsteps stopped as suddenly as they'd started. I swung my headlamp toward the sound, the beam cutting through the darkness between the pines, but there was nothing there. Just trees and shadows and the faint mist that was beginning to settle over the forest floor. "What was that?" I asked, my voice coming out higher than I intended. Earl's smile had vanished. He was looking past us into the woods, his expression unreadable. "Probably just a deer. There's a lot of wildlife out here." "That wasn't a deer," Jason said. His hand had moved to the hunting knife clipped to his belt. "That was people walking. Multiple people. You're hearing things." Earl's tone had shifted again, back to that desperate, pleading quality. Like flipping a switch. "Look, I'm sorry if I seemed weird back there. I'm just stressed out of my mind. My friends are out here somewhere and it's getting darker by the minute. Can we please just keep looking?" I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe that we were just being paranoid, that Jason's suspicions were unfounded, that this was exactly what it appeared to be, a scared hiker who needed help. But those footsteps had been real. I'd heard them clearly. And the way Earl's demeanor kept shifting, the inconsistencies in his story, the too clean boots, it all added up to something wrong. Maybe we should head back, I said carefully. We can get you some food, some water, and in the morning we'll hike out together and get proper help from the rangers. No. Earl's voice was sharp. No, we can't wait until morning. They could be hurt. They could be dying. We have to keep looking. We've been looking for almost 20 minutes and found nothing, Jason said. No tracks, no gear, no response to our calls. If they're out here, they're either too far away to hear us or they don't want to be found. What's that supposed to mean? It means maybe there is no group. Maybe you're out here alone. Earl's face hardened. I told you, there are 4 of us. Dave, Mike, or Matt, and Sarah. We're from Seattle. We came out here to. Wait, I interrupted. You said there were 3 other people earlier. Now you're saying 4 total including you, which is 3 others. But you also said 2 guys and a woman, which is 3 plus you makes 4, but then you list 3 names. So which is it? How many people are we looking for? Earl opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. You're confusing me. I already told you. You told us 3 different things, Jason said. And you still can't get their names straight. What's Mike or Matt's last name? Where in Seattle are you from? What's Sarah's last name? When did you start this hike? Jesus Christ, I don't know. I'm not on trial here. Earl's voice rose to a shout that echoed through the trees. I'm trying to find my friends and you 2 are standing here interrogating me like I'm some kind of criminal. The silence that followed his outburst was absolute. Even the insects had gone quiet. Jason and I stood frozen, and I became acutely aware of how isolated we were, how far from help, how easy it would be for something to go wrong out here and nobody would ever know. Let's just keep looking, I said finally, trying to defuse the tension. We'll search for another 10 minutes, then we really do need to head back. Deal? Earl took a deep breath and nodded. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Thank you. I'm sorry for snapping. I'm just stressed. I get it. I didn't get it, not really, but what else could I say? Lead the way. We started walking again, Earl in front with that crooked headlamp still pointing off at an angle, Jason and me following a few paces behind. Jason moved close to me and spoke in a voice so low I could barely hear it. We need to go back. Now. 10 more minutes. Mike, I'm serious. Something is very wrong here. The way he's moving, he's not searching, he's leading. He's taking us somewhere specific. I watched Earl's back as he walked. Jason was right. There was no hesitation in Earl's movements, no pausing to check landmarks or get his bearings. He was following a route he knew, winding between trees with practiced ease, avoiding obstacles before his light even hit them. Earl, I called out. Where exactly are we going? He didn't turn around. Just want to check one more area. I think I heard something earlier today, like voices, coming from this direction. Earlier today? I thought you got separated just a few hours ago. Right. I meant a few hours ago. I heard voices a few hours ago. Jason grabbed my arm and stopped walking. I stopped with him. Earl continued forward for a few more steps before he realized we weren't following. He turned back, his headlamp sweeping across us. "What's wrong?" he asked. "We're going back to camp," Jason said. "You're welcome to come with us. We'll give you food and a place by the fire for the night. But we're done searching. You can't just leave." "Yes, we can. And we are." Jason's voice had gone cold and hard in a way I'd rarely heard. "You can either walk back with us or you can stay out here alone. Your choice." Earl stared at us for a long moment. The light on his forehead cast his eye sockets in deep shadow, making it impossible to read his expression. Then he laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you figured something out? I think your story is full of holes and I think we shouldn't be out here with you," Jason said. "That's what I think." "And you?" Earl looked at me. "What do you think, Mike? You think I'm lying too?" I didn't want to answer. Part of me still clung to the possibility that we were wrong, that we were being paranoid and cruel to someone who genuinely needed help. But a larger part of me, the part that was listening to the prickling awareness at the base of my skull, knew Jason was right. "I think we should go back," I said quietly. Earl nodded slowly. "Okay. Okay, yeah. I understand. You guys don't know me, don't trust me. That's fine. That's smart, actually. Good instincts." He started walking toward us. "Let's head back to your camp. Maybe I can try to find my group again in the morning when it's light." He was acting reasonable again, but something about it felt performative. Like he was playing a role. And as he got closer, I noticed something that made my stomach clench. There was dirt under his fingernails. Fresh dirt, dark and moist. His hands had been cleaned back at camp, I was sure of it. When had he been digging in the dirt? "Actually," Jason said, and I could hear the tension in his voice that meant he'd noticed something too, "why don't you walk ahead of us? We'll follow you back." Earl stopped about 10 feet away. "Why would I do that?" "Because I don't want you behind us." "You really don't trust me at all, do you?" "No. I really don't." Another laugh, this one longer, with an edge to it that made my skin crawl. "You know what the funny thing is? I was actually going to help you too. I was going to warn you. But you just couldn't leave it alone." "Warn us about what?" I asked. Earl didn't answer. Instead, he reached up and switched off his headlamp, plunging his corner of the forest into darkness. For a moment, Jason and I just stood there, our own lights creating a small bubble of visibility. We could hear Earl moving, but we couldn't see him. "Turn your light back on," Jason commanded. More movement in the darkness. Footsteps, but they didn't sound like they were moving away. They sounded like they were circling us. "Earl, this isn't funny. Turn your damn light on." Then, from somewhere to our left, a different voice spoke. A woman's voice, low and amused. "He can't help you now. None of us can." Jason's light snapped toward the sound but caught only trees and shadow. My own light swept right, searching, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Who's there?" I shouted. "Show yourself." "We've been showing ourselves all along," the woman's voice said, now from behind us. "You just weren't paying attention." I spun around and my light caught a glimpse of someone, a figure in dark clothing, maybe 30 feet back, before they stepped behind a tree. Not Earl. Someone else. "Jason. I see them." His voice was steady but I could hear the fear underneath. "We need to move. Back to camp. Now. We started walking quickly, keeping our lights moving, trying to watch all directions at once. The forest that had seemed merely dark before now felt actively hostile, like the trees themselves were closing in. I could hear footsteps all around us now, not even trying to be subtle. At least 3 different sets, maybe more. Mike. Jason. Wait up. Earl's voice came from somewhere ahead of us, back toward camp. He'd gotten ahead of us somehow. His headlamp clicked back on, bobbing in the distance. I know a shortcut. This way. Don't follow him, Jason hissed. Stay on the path we came from. But I couldn't remember the path. We'd been wandering for over half an hour, following Earl's random directions, and now in the darkness everything looked the same. I tried to spot landmarks, a distinctive tree, a rock formation, anything, but there was nothing. I don't know which way we came from, I admitted. Neither do I, shit. Jason grabbed my shoulder. Okay. New plan. We pick a direction and we move fast. No more following anyone. We navigate back to camp ourselves. What if we get more lost? We're already lost. The question is whether we're lost alone or lost with them. He had a point. I checked my compass. We'd set up camp to the southwest of where we were now, I was pretty sure. This way, I said, pointing. We started jogging, our packs bouncing against our backs, our lights jerking across the uneven ground. Behind us, I could hear Earl calling out. Where are you going? Guys, you're heading the wrong way. There's a ravine that direction. Maybe there was. Maybe there wasn't. I didn't care anymore. All I cared about was putting distance between us and whatever was happening here, whatever Earl and his friends wanted from us. We ran for maybe 10 minutes, branches whipping at our faces, before Jason suddenly stopped. Listen. I stopped, breathing hard. At first, I didn't hear anything except our own ragged breathing and the pounding of blood in my ears. Then, gradually, I picked it up, the sound of our creek. The one that ran past our campsite. We'd found it. This way, Jason said, and we followed the sound of water until we burst into our clearing. The fire had burned down to embers, but it was still there, a small orange glow in the darkness. Our tents stood where we'd left them. Everything looked normal, peaceful, safe. Except for one thing. Earl was already there, sitting on a log by the fire, waiting for us. And he wasn't alone. 2 figures stood on either side of Earl in the firelight. On his left was a woman, maybe in her 40s, with long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore hiking gear that looked like it had seen better days, a faded green jacket with patches sewn over tears, cargo pants stained with what might have been mud or might have been something else. On Earl's right stood another man, younger than Earl, with a thick beard and eyes that reflected the firelight like an animal's. Jason and I froze at the edge of the clearing, our headlamps illuminating the 3 of them in harsh white light. They didn't move. They just sat there watching us with expressions that were difficult to read, not threatening exactly, but not friendly either. Expectant, maybe. Like they'd been waiting for us to arrive, and now that we had, something could begin. There you are, Earl said casually, like we'd just stepped out for a minute. I was starting to worry. These are my friends. The ones I was looking for. The woman smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. Found them right after you ran off. They'd been at the camp the whole time, can you believe it? All that searching for nothing. Right, Jason said slowly. His hand was still on his knife. The camp. Where was that again? Just over the ridge, the bearded man said. His voice was surprisingly soft, almost gentle. We heard you all crashing through the forest and figured we'd come introduce ourselves properly. Seemed like the neighborly thing to do. I felt Jason's hand on my elbow, applying pressure. A warning. My own instincts were screaming at me that something was catastrophically wrong with this situation, but I couldn't quite articulate what. These were Earl's friends. The people we'd been looking for. Shouldn't we be relieved? Shouldn't this be a good thing? Except Earl had said there were 2 men and a woman. Dave and Mike, or Matt and Sarah. But he'd also said 3 people, then 4 counting himself, and none of the numbers had ever quite made sense. And these people, they'd appeared at our campsite while we were gone. How had they known where to find it? Earl hadn't known where our camp was when we'd first met him. Well, now that everyone's found each other, I think you folks should probably head back to your own camp, Jason said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a suggestion. It's late and we've all had a long day. Actually, we were hoping we could stay here for a bit, the woman said. She stood up from the log in one fluid motion. We don't have much of a fire going at our site. This is much nicer. I'm sure it is, but we won't be any trouble. The bearded man stood as well. Promise. We'll just warm up for a few minutes and then we'll get out of your hair. They were moving now, both of them, slowly circling around the fire. Not approaching us exactly, but not staying still either. Earl remained seated, watching with that same unreadable expression. I think you should leave, I said, finding my voice. Right now. The woman stopped moving. That's not very friendly. Here we are, just trying to be social, and you're kicking us out. We didn't invite you to our campsite, Jason said. His voice had gone flat and cold. And you need to leave. Now. For a long moment, nobody moved. The fire crackled and popped, sending up sparks into the night air. In the distance, I heard an owl hoot, the sound lonely and somehow ominous. Then Earl stood up, brushing off his pants. You know what? You're right. We should go. He looked at the woman and the bearded man. Come on. These guys want their space. The woman shrugged. If you say so. She smiled at us again, that same empty smile. Sorry for the intrusion. Have a good night. The 3 of them walked past us toward the tree line. As Earl passed, he leaned in close enough that I could smell him, sweat and dirt and something sour underneath. You should have just helped me search, he whispered. Would have been easier that way. Then they were gone, melting into the darkness beyond the reach of our fire. Jason and I stood there for a full minute, neither of us moving, both of us listening to the sound of their footsteps fading into the forest. When we couldn't hear them anymore, Jason finally exhaled. Pack, he said. Pack everything right now. We're leaving. It's the middle of the night. We'll never make it back to the trailhead in the dark. I don't care. We're not staying here. He was already moving, pulling stakes out of his tent with quick, efficient movements. Something is wrong with those people and I am not spending the night 50 yards away from them. He was right. I knew he was right. But the thought of hiking for hours in complete darkness, exhausted and disoriented, possibly getting lost or injured, it seemed almost as dangerous as staying. What if we just keep watch? I suggested. Take shifts. One of us sleeps while the other keeps the fire going and stays alert. Jason stopped and looked at me like I'd suggested we invite Earl and his friends back for dinner. Are you insane? I'm serious. Look, we're both exhausted. We've been hiking all day and then spent an hour thrashing through the woods. If we try to pack up and hike out now, we're going to make mistakes. Someone's going to trip and sprain an ankle, or we're going to get turned around and end up more lost than we already are. More lost than we already are. We're at our campsite. We know exactly where we are. Do we? How confident are you that you can find the trail in the dark? Because I saw at least 3 different game paths on our way in and I'm not sure I could tell them apart from the actual trail without daylight. Jason ran his hands through his hair, a gesture of frustration I'd seen 1,000 times over the years we'd been friends. I can't believe you want to stay here. I don't want to stay here. But I think it's the safer option. We keep the fire big and bright, we stay together, we stay awake and alert. At first light, we pack up and we hike out as fast as we can. We don't stop, we don't rest, we just get to the car and we leave. He stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. Your optimism is going to get us killed someday. So you've mentioned. I'm not joking this time, Mike. I have a really, really bad feeling about this. Those people, there's something wrong with them. Did you see their eyes? Did you see the way they moved? I had seen it. That fluid, predatory quality to their movements. The way they'd coordinated without speaking, circling around the fire like they'd practiced it. The strange flat effect to their voices. I saw it, I admitted. But what do you want me to do? We're here. They're out there. Our options are limited. Jason looked like he wanted to argue more, but he didn't. Instead, he went to his pack and pulled out his hunting knife, checking the blade in the firelight. Fine. We'll stay. But I'm taking first watch and you're not arguing about it. I wasn't going to. And we're keeping both headlamps on, pointed out into the woods. And we're sitting with our backs to the fire, not facing it, so we can see if anything approaches. Okay. And if I say we run, we run. No discussion, no hesitation. Agreed? Agreed. We arranged ourselves on a log with our backs to the fire, our headlamps creating 2 cones of light pointing into the forest. I pulled out some beef jerky and a water bottle, forcing myself to eat even though my stomach was churning. Jason sat rigid beside me, his knife in his hand, his eyes scanning the darkness. The forest had gone quiet again. No insects, no owls, no wind rustling the branches. Just silence, thick and oppressive, broken only by the crackle of the fire behind us and our own breathing. Do you think they're still out there? I asked quietly. Yes. Watching us? Probably. I took another drink of water, trying to settle my nerves. What do you think they want? Jason was quiet for so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. Then, finally, he said, I don't know. But whatever it is, I don't think we want to find out. We sat in silence after that, watching the darkness, waiting for dawn. An hour passed. Then another. My eyes burned with exhaustion and my back ached from sitting in one position, but I didn't dare close my eyes. Every rustle of leaves, every crack of a branch, every small sound sent adrenaline spiking through my system. Around what must have been 2 in the morning, I heard it, footsteps, slow and deliberate, circling our campsite just beyond the range of our lights. Not trying to be quiet. Wanting us to know they were there. Jason, I whispered. I hear them. The footsteps continued, clockwise around our position. Then, from the opposite direction, more footsteps. They were surrounding us again, moving with that same eerie coordination we'd seen by the fire. Jason stood up slowly, his knife ready. I stood with him, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The footsteps got closer. Closer. I could hear breathing now, ragged and labored, like whoever was out there was struggling with some enormous effort. Then Earl's voice drifted out of the darkness, sing-song and mocking. "We know you can hear us, Mike. We know you're scared. But there's no reason to be scared. We just want to talk. We just want to be friends. Go away." I shouted, my voice cracking. "Leave us alone." A laugh, the woman's voice this time. "But you were so helpful earlier. So willing to search for poor lost Earl. Where's that compassion now?" "Last warning," Jason said loudly, holding up his knife so the blade caught the firelight. "Come into this clearing and I will defend us." The footsteps stopped. The forest went silent again. For a moment, I thought maybe they'd actually left. Then I heard something that made my blood run cold, whispered conversation, too quiet to make out the words, but close. So close. They were right there, just beyond our vision, discussing something. Planning something. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that we weren't making it to morning without a fight. The whispered conversation in the darkness lasted maybe 30 seconds, though it felt like an eternity. Then the footsteps resumed, but this time they were moving away, retreating back into the forest. Jason and I stood frozen by the fire, listening until we couldn't hear them anymore. "They're playing with us," Jason said quietly. His knuckles were white around the handle of his knife. "This is all some kind of sick game to them." I didn't disagree. The whole thing had an orchestrated quality to it, Earl's appearance at our campsite, the mysterious companions who'd supposedly been lost, the circling behavior. It felt choreographed, like we were being herded or tested. "Maybe we should reconsider hiking out," I said. "Right now, while they're not around." Jason shook his head. "They'd hear us packing up. And I guarantee you they know these woods better than we do. In the dark, with them actively pursuing us, we wouldn't make it a mile." He was probably right, but the thought of sitting here for another 4 or 5 hours until dawn felt unbearable. Every shadow looked like a person. Every sound made me flinch. I'd never felt so exposed, so vulnerable, in all my years of camping. So what do? We stay alert. We stay together. And if they come back, when they come back, we make it very clear that we're not easy prey. Jason sat back down on the log, positioning himself so he could see as much of the clearing as possible. "Go ahead and try to rest for a bit. I'll wake you in an hour and we'll switch. I'm not going to be able to sleep. Try anyway. We need to conserve energy." I knew he was right, but the thought of closing my eyes with those people out there somewhere felt impossible. Still, I sat down next to him and tried to relax, tried to let the warmth of the fire soothe my jangled nerves. My eyes felt gritty and heavy. The adrenaline that had been sustaining me was starting to fade, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion. I must have dozed off despite my intentions, because the next thing I knew Jason was shaking my shoulder, his hand clamped over my mouth before I could make a sound. "Don't talk," he whispered directly into my ear. "Just look." He took his hand away and I slowly turned my head to follow his gaze. At first, I didn't see anything, just the dark mass of trees at the edge of our firelight. Then I saw it, movement. A figure standing between 2 pines, maybe 40 feet away, just barely visible in the shadows. Not moving, not making a sound. Just standing there. Watching. My breath caught in my throat. As my eyes adjusted, I could make out more details. It was the woman, I could tell by the long ponytail. She was completely still, her hands at her sides, her face pointed in our direction. How long had she been standing there? How long had I been asleep? There's another one on the other side, Jason breathed. The bearded guy. Been there for at least 10 minutes. I turned my head slowly and spotted him, a darker shadow against the darkness, positioned at roughly the same distance as the woman but on the opposite side of our clearing. They were flanking us, watching from 2 different angles. Where's Earl? Haven't seen him. But I'd bet anything he's out there somewhere, completing the triangle. We sat in silence, watching them watch us. Neither figure moved. They could have been statues. Minutes ticked by, 5, 10, 15. The fire started to burn lower and I carefully added more wood, trying not to make any sudden movements. As the flames rose higher, casting more light into the forest, I thought I saw the woman take a small step backward, staying just at the edge of visibility. They don't like the light, I whispered. No. They don't. Jason's voice was grim. Which means we need to keep this fire huge. Use everything we've got if we have to. I looked at our diminishing pile of firewood. We'd gathered enough for a normal night, not for an all-night vigil against whatever the hell this was. At this rate, we'd run out in maybe 2 hours, 3 at most. We're going to need more wood. I know. But I'm not going into those trees to get it. Are you? I looked at the dark forest, at the 2 figures standing motionless in the shadows, and shook my head. No amount of firewood was worth stepping outside the protection of our clearing. Another hour crept by. The woman and the bearded man remained at their posts, unmoving. My legs cramped from sitting in one position, but I was afraid to stand up, afraid that any change in our behavior might trigger something. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the crackling fire and the occasional pop of sap in the burning wood. Then, without warning, both figures turned and walked away, disappearing into the forest. One moment they were there, the next they were gone, as if they'd never existed at all. What the hell? I muttered. Jason stood up, stretching carefully, his eyes scanning the tree line. I don't like this. Why would they just leave? Maybe they got bored. Maybe they realized we weren't going to. I stopped mid-sentence because Earl had just walked into our clearing. Not from where the other 2 had been standing, but from behind us, from a direction we hadn't been watching. He must have circled all the way around while we were focused on his companions. Jesus! I jumped to my feet, my heart racing. How long have you been there? Earl smiled that empty smile. In the firelight, his face looked gaunt and skull-like, the shadows pooling in his eye sockets. Just got here. Saw you 2 were still awake. Thought I'd come check on you. Check on us? Jason's voice was hard. You mean continue stalking us? Stalking is such an ugly word. I prefer keeping an eye on. For your safety. Our safety. Jason laughed, but there was no humor in it. Right. Because we're the ones in danger here. Earl cocked his head to one side, still smiling. Aren't you? You're miles from help, surrounded by wilderness, with 3 strangers who know these woods far better than you ever will. I'd say you're in quite a bit of danger, actually. The casual way he said it, like he was commenting on the weather, made my skin crawl. This was a threat, barely veiled, and he wanted us to know it. What do you want? I asked. Just tell us what you want. Want? Earl took a few steps closer to the fire, holding his hands out to warm them. Jason moved to intercept him, but Earl stopped just outside of arm's reach. I don't want anything. Just curious about you two. Not many people come through here anymore. Not since, well. Not for a while. Not since what? Earl's smile widened. Not since people started disappearing. The words hung in the air between us. Jason's hand tightened on his knife and I felt my whole body tense, ready to run or fight or do whatever it took to survive. What are you talking about? Jason demanded. Oh, you know. Hikers who come out here and never make it back. Happens more often than you'd think. The wilderness can be very dangerous. Easy to get lost. Easy to have an accident. Easy to just vanish. He met my eyes, and for the first time I saw something flicker in his expression, something predatory and hungry. Are you too easy to vanish, I wonder? Get out of our camp, I said, my voice shaking. Right now. Or I swear to God. You'll what? Fight me? Earl laughed. There are 3 of us, Mike. 3 of us who know every inch of these woods, who survived out here for longer than you can imagine. And 2 of you, soft, scared city boys playing at wilderness camping. How do you think that math works out? Jason moved then, fast, putting himself between Earl and me. You need to leave. Last warning. Or what? Earl's smile finally faded, replaced by something cold and calculating. You'll call for help. There's no cell service out here. You'll fight us. You're outnumbered and exhausted. You'll run. We'll catch you. We always do. Always do, I repeated. My mouth had gone dry. How many people have you? Does it matter? Earl shrugged. You're just another couple of campers who picked the wrong trail. Nothing personal. It's just what we do now. It's what we are. He turned to go, then paused and looked back over his shoulder. Oh, and Mike. That fire of yours is going to burn out eventually. Probably around dawn, I'd guess, based on how much would you have left. And when it does, when you're sitting here in the dark with your little headlamps making you perfect targets, well. That's when things will get interesting. Then he was gone, walking back into the forest with that same confident stride. Not hurried, not worried. Like he had all the time in the world. Jason and I stood there, not speaking, both of us processing what had just happened. Earl hadn't just threatened us, he promised us. Promised that they were going to do something when our fire went out. Promised that we were going to end up like the other hikers who disappeared on this trail. We have to go, Jason said. Right now. We pack everything we can carry in 2 minutes and we run. He said they'd catch us. Maybe. But at least we'd be trying. At least we'd have a chance. Jason was already moving, stuffing things into his pack with shaking hands. Come on, Mike. Help me. I wanted to. God, I wanted to run, to get as far away from this nightmare as possible. But something Earl had said was bothering me, scratching at the back of my mind. Wait, I said. He told us exactly when they're going to attack. Why would he do that? Jason stopped packing and looked at me. What? He said when the fire goes out, that's when things get interesting. He told us their plan. Why would he do that unless? I trailed off as understanding hit me like a physical blow. Unless he wants us to run. Unless the whole point is to make us panic and bolt into the woods where they have the advantage. You think this is reverse psychology? You think he's trying to manipulate us into staying here? Or he's trying to manipulate us into running? Or maybe both. Maybe it doesn't matter what we choose because either way, they've got us trapped. I sat down heavily on the log, my legs suddenly unable to support me. We're screwed, Jason. We're completely screwed. No. Jason's voice was firm. No, we're not. Because we're smarter than they think we are. And we're going to survive this. How? He looked at the fire, then at our dwindling woodpile, then back at me. We make them think we're doing what they expect. We wait here by the fire, looking scared and helpless. But we prepare. We get our gear ready, we plan an escape route, we figure out exactly what we're going to do the moment we get an opening. And then, when they make their move, whatever that move is, we're ready. We fight back. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe we had any control over this situation at all. But the truth was, we were two amateur campers being hunted by three people who clearly had experience with this, who'd done it before, who knew exactly how to take apart their prey. Still, what choice did we have except to try? Okay, I said. Okay. What do we need to do? Jason pulled out his pack and started organizing our supplies with quick, efficient movements. First, we consolidate everything into my pack. Yours is going to be a decoy, we'll stuff it with clothes and gear we don't need. Then we rig up a tripwire using our tent line, something they might hit if they approach from the woods. We need every advantage we can get. As he worked, I kept watch, my eyes scanning the tree line for any sign of our stalkers. They were out there somewhere, I knew. Watching. Waiting. Planning whatever horror they had in store for us. And I couldn't shake the image of Earl's smile, or the casual way he'd talked about people vanishing, or the sick certainty in his voice when he'd said, "We always catch them." How many, I wondered. How many people had stood where we were standing, tried what we were trying, and failed? And more importantly, what had happened to them after? I had a feeling we were going to find out soon enough. We worked in frantic silence, shoving gear into Jason's pack with shaking hands. Every few seconds, one of us would look up and scan the tree line, expecting to see Earl or his companions emerging from the darkness. The fire was burning lower now, the circle of light around us shrinking with each passing minute. "How much battery do you have left in your headlamp?" Jason asked. I checked. Maybe 60%. You? About the same. Without the spares, that gives us maybe 3 hours total if we're conservative. 4 if we're lucky. He zipped up his pack and hefted it. We'll have to navigate mostly by moonlight once we hit the trail. If we can find the trail. We'll find it. We marked the turnoff with cairns, remember? 3 stacked rocks on the left side. We just need to follow the creek until we hit the junction, then look for the markers. I wanted to believe it would be that simple. But everything about this situation had gone wrong in ways I couldn't have predicted, and I had no faith that our escape would be any different. Still, staying here wasn't an option. Earl had made that clear enough. I went back to my tent one last time to grab my sleeping bag. As I reached for it, something caught my eye, a glint of metal in the corner of the tent. My heart leaped. Had I been wrong about the knife? Had I just missed it somehow? I crawled closer and felt my stomach drop. It was a knife, but not mine. This one was smaller, cruder, the blade hand-filed to a wicked edge. And it had been stabbed through something, a piece of paper, pinning it to the tent floor. With trembling hands, I pulled the knife free and held the paper up to my headlamp. Words were scrawled across it in messy handwriting, the letters pressed so hard they'd nearly torn through. Run fast. Run far. We'll still catch you. Jason, I called out, my voice breaking. Jason, you need to see this. He appeared at the tent entrance and I handed him the note. His face went pale as he read it, then looked at the knife. That's not yours. No. Someone put it here. While we were, I don't know, while we were standing right outside, maybe. They were here. They were in my tent. Jason looked at the knife more closely, and I saw his expression shift from fear to something else. Recognition, maybe. Or a terrible understanding. Mike. Look at the handle. I looked. The handle was wrapped in dirty cloth, secured with what looked like fishing line. But underneath the grime, I could see something else, initials carved into the wood. Dar. Dave, I whispered. Earl said one of his friends was named Dave. Dave, who doesn't exist. Who was never lost. Jason's voice was hollow. Except someone with those initials did exist. Someone who owned this knife. Someone who. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The implication was clear and horrible. Earl and his companions hadn't just threatened previous campers. They'd taken their things. Their gear. Their weapons. Trophies from people who'd never made it home. How many, I wondered again. How many knives did they have? How many notes had they left? How many times had they played this exact same game? We're leaving, Jason said, his voice tight. Right now. No more discussion. I nodded, crawling out of the tent and standing on shaky legs. Jason was already moving toward the fire, kicking dirt over it to extinguish the flames. I started to protest, we needed the light, needed the protection, but he cut me off. If we leave it burning, they'll know exactly when we left. This way, they might think we're still here, buying us time. He stomped on the embers, sending up clouds of ash and smoke. Grab your pack. We move in 30 seconds. I ran to get my decoy pack, the one we'd filled with non-essential gear. The weight felt wrong, too light, but in the darkness it might pass for the real thing if someone was watching from a distance. Jason shouldered his pack, the one with all our actual supplies, and pulled out his compass. Southwest, he said. We follow the creek southwest until we hit the junction, then we take the main trail back to the parking lot. It's about 6 miles. If we push hard, we can make it by dawn. And if they follow us, then we deal with it. He pulled out his knife, the only real weapon we had left, and held it ready. But we don't stop. No matter what we hear, no matter what they say, we don't stop moving. Agreed? Agreed. The fire was out now, just a pile of smoking ash. Jason clicked off his headlamp and I did the same, plunging us into darkness. For a moment, I couldn't see anything. Then my eyes started to adjust, picking out the shapes of trees against the slightly lighter sky. There was a half-moon tonight, enough to navigate by if we were careful. We started walking, moving as quietly as we could toward the sound of the creek. Every step felt too loud, every breath too harsh. I kept expecting to hear Earl's voice calling out from the darkness, or to feel hands grabbing me from behind. But there was nothing. Just silence and the soft gurgle of water over rocks. We reached the creek and turned southwest, following its winding path through the forest. The undergrowth was thick here, branches and brambles catching at our clothes and scratching our skin. Jason led the way, moving with his hand on his compass, checking our direction every few minutes. We'd been walking for maybe 20 minutes when I heard it, footsteps behind us. Not close, but not far either. Keeping pace. Following. Jason, I whispered. I hear them. Keep moving. The footsteps got closer. I could hear breathing now, labored and raspy, like someone struggling to keep up. But that didn't make sense. If they knew these woods as well as Earl claimed, they should have been able to move faster than us, should have been able to catch us easily. Unless they didn't want to catch us yet. Unless they were hurting us again, pushing us in a specific direction. Jason, stop. We can't stop. You agreed. Just for a second. Listen. We stopped, and the footsteps behind us stopped too. Silence stretched out for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15. Then, from our left, from a completely different direction, more footsteps. And from our right, a third set. They were flanking us, boxing us in. They're surrounding us again, I said, my voice shaking. They're trying to trap us. Then we break through. Pick a direction and run. On 3. 1. Wait. Something about this felt wrong. The footsteps were too obvious, too easy to hear. Earlier, these people had moved like ghosts, barely making a sound. Now they were crashing through the underbrush like amateurs. I think they want us to run. I think they're trying to spook us into going a specific direction. What direction? I looked around, trying to orient myself. The creek was to our left. Behind us was the way we'd come. To our right was dense forest. And ahead, the ground sloped downward into darkness. I couldn't see what was down there, but I remembered something from the map we'd studied before the trip. There was a ravine in this area, a steep drop with a river at the bottom. If you went over the edge in the dark. They're trying to drive us toward the ravine, I said. They want us to panic and run straight ahead into the drop. Jason swore under his breath. Okay. New plan. We move parallel to the creek, but we go left, toward the slope instead of away from it. It's the opposite of what they expect. That's going to take us farther from the trail. I know. But if we try to go the way they're hurting us, we're dead. At least this way we have a chance. The footsteps were getting closer now, converging on our position from 3 sides. We had maybe 30 seconds before they reached us. Jason grabbed my arm and we started moving left, toward the upslope, pushing through the undergrowth as quietly as we could. The footsteps changed direction, following us. They'd realized we weren't taking the bait. Run, Jason said. We ran. My pack bounced against my back, branches whipped at my face, my boots slipped on loose rocks and pine needles. Behind us, I could hear them crashing through the forest, no longer trying to be subtle. They were chasing us openly now, the game changing from subtle manipulation to outright pursuit. My lungs burned. My legs ached. I'd been hiking all day and awake most of the night, and my body was running on pure adrenaline and fear. Jason was a few steps ahead of me, his shadow barely visible in the moonlight. "There," he shouted, pointing. I looked and saw it, a fallen tree, massive and old, creating a natural barrier. If we could get over it, it might slow our pursuers down, buy us a few precious seconds. Jason scrambled up and over, then reached back to help pull me up. I grabbed his hand and he hauled me up onto the trunk. For a moment, I stood there on top of the log, looking back the way we'd come. I could see them now, 3 shapes moving through the darkness, maybe 50 feet back. Earl in the middle, the woman on the left, the bearded man on the right. They weren't running. They were walking, steady and relentless, like they knew exactly where we were going and weren't worried about losing us. "Move!" Jason pulled me forward and we jumped down the other side, landing hard. Pain shot through my ankle as I hit the ground wrong, but I forced myself to keep moving. We couldn't stop. Stopping meant dying. We ran for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the forest a dark blur around us. The slope got steeper, the trees more dense. I had no idea where we were anymore, no idea which direction we were heading. All I knew was that we had to keep moving, had to put distance between us and the people who wanted us dead. Finally, Jason stopped in a small clearing and leaned against a tree, breathing hard. I collapsed next to him, my chest heaving, my legs trembling. "Did we lose them?" I gasped. Jason held up a hand, listening. I held my breath, straining to hear any sound of pursuit. But there was nothing. Just the wind in the trees and our own labored breathing. "I think so. For now." Jason checked his compass, then swore. "We're way off course. We've been heading northwest instead of southwest. We're going deeper into the wilderness instead of toward the trail. Can we correct? Can we turn around? Not the way we came. They're probably still between us and the creek." He studied the compass, then looked up at the stars visible through the canopy. "We need to circle around, come at the trail from a different angle. It's going to add miles to our hike." "How many miles?" "I don't know. 3. 4. We might not make it out by dawn." The implication of that hung in the air between us. If we were still in the woods when the sun came up, Earl and his companions would be able to see us clearly. No more shadows to hide in, no more darkness to cover our movements. We'd be exposed, vulnerable. "So we move faster," I said, forcing myself to stand despite my screaming muscles. "We don't stop again until we hit the trail." Jason nodded and stood as well. But as he did, something moved in the shadows at the edge of the clearing. A figure, stepping into view. My heart sank as Earl emerged into the moonlight, that same smile on his face. "That was fun," he said conversationally, like we'd all just finished playing a game of tag. "You two ran faster than I expected. Must be all that city boy gym training." How? I couldn't finish the sentence. How had he gotten ahead of us? We'd been running flat out. There was no way he could have circled around unless we weren't running from you at all, Jason said slowly, understanding dawning in his voice. "We were running from the other two. You were already ahead of us. You were waiting." Earl's smile widened. "Smart boy. See, that's the thing about these woods. We know every trail, every game path, every shortcut. You can run all night and you'll still end up exactly where we want you." The woman stepped out of the shadows to our right. The bearded man appeared on our left. We were surrounded again, boxed in, with nowhere to run. "This is your last chance," Earl said, and for the first time, I heard something almost like genuine emotion in his voice. Not compassion exactly, but maybe something close to it. Regret, perhaps. Walk back to your camp. Pack up your gear. Leave. We'll let you go. We'll let you be one of the lucky ones who got away. Why? I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. Why are you doing this? Why not just let us go now? Earl's expression shifted, the smile fading into something harder, colder. Because the forest requires balance. For 3 years now, we've maintained that balance. Some people leave. Some people stay. That's how it works. That's how we've survived. He took a step closer. But you too, you keep fighting it. You keep refusing to accept reality. And that makes you special. That makes you interesting. We're not special, Jason said. We're just people trying to survive. That's what they all say. Right up until the end. Earl glanced at his companions, some silent communication passing between them. Final offer. Turn around. Walk away. Or stay and become part of the forest. Like we did. There's another option, Jason said quietly. His hand was on his knife. We fight. Earl laughed, a sound like breaking glass. With what? One knife between two of you. Against 3 of us who know how to kill and hide bodies where they'll never be found. He shook his head. That's not bravery, son. That's suicide. Maybe. But at least we'll take one of you with us. The clearing went silent. The woman and the bearded man tensed, their hands moving to weapons I couldn't see but knew were there. Earl's smile had vanished completely now, replaced by something cold and dangerous. Wrong answer, he said softly. And then they moved. Earl lunged forward but Jason was ready. He sidestepped and slashed with his knife, catching Earl across the forearm. Earl hissed and stumbled back, clutching his arm. Blood looked black in the moonlight. Run! Jason shouted at me. I ran. Not thinking, not planning, just pure animal panic driving my legs. I crashed through the undergrowth, branches tearing at my face and clothes. Behind me, I heard Jason following, heard Earl shouting something, heard multiple sets of footsteps giving chase. I clicked on my headlamp without thinking, needing to see where I was going. The beam bounced wildly as I ran, illuminating tree trunks and low-hanging branches and roots that seemed designed to trip me. My ankle, the one I'd landed wrong on earlier, was screaming in protest, but I ignored it. Pain didn't matter. Only escape mattered. Mike, left. Jason's voice came from right behind me. Go left. I veered left and saw what he'd spotted, a gap in the trees, maybe a deer trail or just a lucky break in the undergrowth. We plunged through it, moving downhill now, gravity pulling us forward faster than was safe. I nearly fell twice, catching myself at the last second on tree trunks. The voices behind us were getting more distant. Or maybe that was just wishful thinking. Maybe they were pacing us, waiting for us to exhaust ourselves, waiting for the perfect moment to close in. We burst out of the trees onto a rocky slope. My headlamp illuminated loose scree and larger boulders, treacherous footing that could easily break an ankle or worse. But there was no other way. We started picking our way down, moving as quickly as we dared. Halfway down the slope, my boot slipped on loose rock. I windmilled my arms, trying to regain balance, but momentum carried me forward. I went down hard, sliding several feet before managing to stop myself against a boulder. Pain exploded in my ribs and hip. Mike. Jason was beside me in seconds, hauling me to my feet. Are you hurt? I'm fine, I gasped, even though I wasn't. My ribs felt like they might be cracked and my hip was already swelling. Keep moving. We made it to the bottom of the slope and found ourselves on flatter ground. My headlamp swept across the area, more trees, more darkness, no landmarks I recognized. We could be anywhere. We could be running in circles for all I knew. The creek, Jason said, breathing hard. We need to find the creek again. It's our only reference point. Which direction? He checked his compass, his hands shaking so badly he could barely read it. Southwest. Same as before. It should be. A voice cut through the darkness, eerily close. The woman's voice. They went down the slope. Emil, circle around and cut them off at the bottom. Earl, you're with me. My blood turned to ice. She wasn't talking to us. She was talking to her companions. Coordinating. And she'd used a name, Emil. Not Earl's made-up friends from his made-up story. Real people. Real hunters. We need to move, Jason whispered. Now. No headlamps. What? I can't see. They can track the light. It's like a beacon. Turn it off. He clicked off his headlamp and after a moment's hesitation, I did the same. Darkness swallowed us whole. I could barely see Jason's silhouette 3 feet away, could barely see my own hands in front of my face. Hold on to my pack, Jason whispered. Don't let go. I grabbed the back of his pack and we started moving, Jason leading us through the darkness by compass and moonlight alone. It was terrifying, stumbling through the forest unable to see obstacles until we were right on top of them. Twice I walked face first into low branches. Once I stepped into a hole and nearly twisted my ankle again. But it worked. The voices behind us grew more distant, more confused. Without our headlamps to track, they'd lost us in the darkness. We walked for maybe 30 minutes like that, moving slowly but steadily southwest. My eyes adjusted as much as they could, picking up shapes and shadows, the slightly lighter patches of sky between the trees. Jason would stop every few minutes to check the compass, making small corrections to our course. Then, finally, I heard it, the sound of running water. The creek. We made it, I whispered. Not yet. We're still miles from the trailhead. But there was relief in Jason's voice too. We'd found our reference point. We knew where we were, at least roughly. And we hadn't heard Earl or his companions for several minutes now. We followed the creek downstream, moving more confidently now. The terrain was familiar, the path clearer. We passed landmarks I recognized from our hike in, a distinctive boulder, a tree split by lightning, the remains of an old campfire ring. We were getting close to where the creek met the main trail. That's when I heard it. A single voice, calling out from the darkness ahead of us. Not behind. Ahead. Positions, the woman's voice rang out. Earl, north side of the junction. Emil, south side. I've got the trail itself. Box formation. They have to come this way eventually. Jason grabbed my arm, stopping me dead. We stood frozen, barely breathing, trying to process what we'd just heard. They weren't chasing us anymore. They'd gotten ahead of us again, set up at the trail junction, the exact place we needed to go to escape. How? I whispered. How did they? They know these woods. They know where we're going. Jason's voice was hollow with despair. They probably have shortcuts, paths we don't know about. They've been playing with us this whole time. So what do we do? He was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then, we don't go to the junction. We follow the creek all the way down until it hits the river, then we follow the river until we hit a road or another trail. It'll take longer, but... Earl, you see anything? The woman's voice again, closer now. Maybe 50 yards away. Nothing yet. Earl's voice came from our right. But they'll come. They have to. This is the only way out. Unless they're smarter than we gave them credit for, a third voice said. Male, deep, with a slight accent I couldn't place. Emil. Maybe they figured out the trap. They're not that smart, Earl said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. They're soft. Scared. Right now they're probably standing by the creek trying to figure out what to do, thinking they're being clever by not moving. But they're just making it easier for us. He was right. That's exactly what we were doing. And the fact that he knew it, that he could predict our behavior so accurately, was terrifying in a way that made my skin crawl. We need to move, Jason breathed directly into my ear. Right now. Stay low, stay quiet. We're going to follow the creek downstream but stay in the water. It'll hide our tracks and muffle our footsteps. The water will be freezing. Better freezing than dead. He had a point. We crept toward the creek, moving as silently as possible. The bank was steep here, maybe 4 feet down to the water. Jason slid down first, catching himself on rocks to avoid splashing. I followed, biting back a gasp as the ice-cold water soaked through my boots and pants. The creek was shallow, only ankle-deep, but the current was strong and the rocks were slippery. We waded downstream, each step careful and deliberate. The cold was shocking, numbing my feet within minutes. My teeth started to chatter and I had to clench my jaw to keep quiet. Behind us, I heard movement in the forest. Footsteps. They were searching, sweeping through the area systematically. We needed to put more distance between us and them, but we couldn't move faster without making noise, without splashing and giving away our position. There. Earl's voice, sharp with excitement. By the creek. I see a light. What light? We didn't have our headlamps on. Unless. I looked down and my heart sank. The screen of Jason's compass was glowing, a soft blue light that would be invisible in daylight but stood out like a beacon in the darkness. Jason swore and stuffed it into his pocket, but it was too late. They'd seen it. They knew where we were. Go. Jason shoved me forward. Run. Forget about being quiet, just run. We splashed through the creek, no longer trying to hide our movement. Behind us, I heard them crashing through the forest, closing in. The creek got deeper, the current stronger. The water was up to my knees now, then my thighs, the cold so intense it felt like fire. There's a waterfall ahead, Jason shouted over the sound of rushing water. A small one, maybe 6 feet. We need to. His words were cut off as the creek suddenly dropped away beneath us. I had half a second to suck in a breath before I went over, plunging into a deep pool at the bottom of the falls. The cold water closed over my head, the current pulling me down and tumbling me like I was nothing. I kicked for the surface, my lungs burning, my pack weighing me down. My head broke water and I gasped for air, choking on creek water. Strong hands grabbed me, Jason, and pulled me toward the shore. We crawled onto the rocky bank, coughing and shivering, our gear soaked through. Above us, at the top of the falls, I saw movement. They'd reached the edge. But they weren't coming down. They were just standing there, watching. Why aren't they following? I gasped between coughs. Jason looked up at them, then around at where we'd ended up. His face went pale. Oh no. Oh God, no. What? What is it? He pointed downstream with a shaking hand. I turned and looked, and my stomach dropped. We were in a box canyon. The waterfall behind us, steep rock walls on 3 sides, and ahead was just more cliff face, maybe 40 feet high, with no obvious way up. We'd run right into a natural trap. And standing at the top of the falls, backlit by moonlight, Earl raised his hand in a casual wave. Told you we'd catch you, he called down. You really should have taken our offer when you had the chance. The woman appeared beside him, then Emil on his other side. All 3 of them looking down at us like we were animals in a pit. Which, I realized with horror, was exactly what we were. What now? Earl's voice echoed off the canyon walls. You want to keep running? There's nowhere left to run to. Or maybe you want to fight. You're wet, you're tired, you're trapped. Doesn't seem like much of a fight to me. Jason stood up, water streaming from his clothes, his knife still somehow clutched in his hand. Come down here and find out. Earl laughed. Oh, we will. But first we're going to let you think about it for a while. Let you understand exactly how screwed you are. Let the fear really sink in. He settled down on a rock, making himself comfortable. We've got all night. And nowhere else to be. The 3 of them just sat there at the top of the falls, watching us. Waiting. Like they had all the time in the world. Because they did. And we had none. I stood in the freezing water at the bottom of the box canyon, my whole body shaking from cold and fear, staring up at the 3 figures silhouetted against the night sky. Jason was beside me, still gripping his knife, but I could see the defeat in his posture. We were trapped. Completely, utterly trapped. We need to find a way out, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. There is no way out. That's the whole point. Jason turned slowly, examining the canyon walls. They herded us here. This was always where we were going to end up. I looked at the cliff faces surrounding us. 40 feet of nearly vertical rock, slick with moisture and moss. Even in daylight with proper climbing gear, it would be challenging. In darkness, with wet hands and no equipment, it was essentially impossible. There has to be something. A crack in the rocks, a way to climb. Mike. Jason's voice was flat. Stop. Just stop. I'm not giving up. I'm not just going to stand here and what? What are you going to do? He turned to face me, and in the moonlight I could see tears streaming down his face mixing with the creek water. I told you. I told you not to help him. I told you something was wrong. But you just had to be the good guy, had to help the lost hiker, and now we're going to die because of it. The words hit me like a physical blow. He was right. This was my fault. If I'd listened to Jason's instincts instead of my own need to help everyone, we'd be safe in our camp right now. Or better yet, we'd have packed up and left the moment Earl appeared. But I'd insisted on helping, insisted on giving Earl the benefit of the doubt, and my compassion had led us straight into this nightmare. I'm sorry, I said. God, Jason, I'm so sorry. He wiped his face with a shaking hand. Doesn't matter now. Sorry doesn't get us out of here. Above us, Earl called down. You two fighting. That's good. Fear makes people say things they don't mean. Makes them turn on each other. We've seen it before. I looked up at them. They hadn't moved. They were just sitting there watching us, like we were entertainment. Like our terror was something to be savored. How many? I shouted up at them. How many people have you done this to? Earl cocked his head, considering. How many, Gloria? Lost count after the first year, the woman, Gloria, replied. Her voice was casual, conversational. 20. 25. Some of them were easy. Some put up a fight. But they all ended up the same in the end. Why? The question burst out of me. Why are you doing this? There was a long pause. Then Emil spoke, his deep voice echoing off the canyon walls. Because we can. Because out here, there are no rules. No police, no consequences. Just us and the forest and people stupid enough to come here. That's not a reason, Jason said. That's just, you're just murderers. Psychopaths. Maybe, Earl said. Or maybe we're just what you become when you spend enough time in the wilderness. When you realize that civilization is just a thin veneer and underneath, we're all animals. Predators and prey. And you too, he leaned forward, his smile visible even from this distance, your prey. I felt something snap inside me. Rage, hot and fierce, cutting through the fear and cold. Fuck you, I shouted. You hear me? Fuck you and your twisted philosophy. You're not predators. You're not survivors. You're just broken people who get off on hurting others. Earl's smile faded. For a moment, I thought I'd made a terrible mistake, that my outburst would make him come down here and finish us immediately. But instead, he stood up slowly. You know what? I was going to make this quick. But now I think we'll take our time. Emil, Gloria, let's go have a little chat with our new friends. They started moving along the cliff edge, looking for a way down. My moment of defiance evaporated, replaced by renewed terror. They were coming. They were actually coming down here, and there was nowhere for us to run. Jason, I said urgently. Your knife. Give it to me. What? No, I'm the one who knows how to. You can barely stand. Your ankle is destroyed. If they come at us, you're not going to be able to fight. I held out my hand. Give me the knife. You find a hiding spot, stay quiet. I'll try to hold them off. That's suicide. Yeah, well, so is doing nothing. I grabbed the knife from his hand before he could protest further. It felt heavy, inadequate. One knife against 3 people who'd done this dozens of times before. But it was all we had. Jason limped to the base of the cliff and wedged himself into a crack in the rock, making himself as small as possible. I stayed in the center of the small beach area, knife ready, trying to remember anything I'd ever learned about self-defense. Keep the blade up, protect your vitals, go for vulnerable areas, throat, eyes, groin. I heard them before I saw them. Rocks clattering as they descended the canyon wall off to my left, where the slope was slightly less vertical. They were taking their time, not rushing, confident in their victory. Earl emerged from the shadows first, followed by Gloria, then Emil. They spread out as they approached, forming a loose semicircle. Earl was holding something, I couldn't quite make out what it was in the darkness. Gloria had what looked like a hunting knife, bigger than mine. Emil's hands were empty, but he was massive, easily 6'4", with the build of someone who'd spent years doing hard physical labor. "Last chance," Earl said, stopping about 15 feet away. "Drop the knife. Submit. We'll make it fast. Go to hell." Earl sighed. "That's what they all say. Right before they realize how much it's going to hurt." They started to advance. I backed up, trying to keep all three of them in view, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. This was it. This was how I was going to die, at the bottom of a box canyon in the middle of nowhere, killed by 3 psychopaths who wouldn't even remember my name a week from now. Then I heard Jason's voice, strong and clear, coming from behind me. "Mike. The fire starter. Your pack." My pack. In my desperate scramble through the creek, I'd somehow held onto it, the strap still around my shoulders. And inside was the emergency fire starter kit I always carried. Magnesium bars, waterproof matches, and most importantly, a small flask of white gas camp fuel that I'd refilled before this trip. The fuel was flammable. Very flammable. I fumbled with my pack straps, trying to get it off without taking my eyes off the advancing predators. Earl saw what I was doing and lunged forward, but I was faster. I got the pack off and hurled it at Emil, the biggest target, then dove for it as he batted it aside. My hands found the main compartment zipper. Found the fire kit. Found the flask. "Don't even think about it," Gloria said. She was the closest now, her knife raised. "That little bottle isn't going to save you." "Maybe not." I unscrewed the cap with shaking hands. "But it's going to hurt you." I threw the open flask at her. The fuel splashed across her jacket and pants. She yelped and jumped back, wiping at her clothes. The smell of white gas filled the air, sharp and chemical. "Light it!" Jason shouted. "Light her up." But I couldn't. Even after everything they'd done, everything they'd threatened to do, I couldn't bring myself to set another human being on fire. Some line I couldn't cross, some last shred of humanity I couldn't let go of. Earl saw my hesitation and smiled. "Too soft." I knew it. "You don't have it in you to." Jason came out of nowhere, limping but fast, with a lit match in his hand. He must have had his own fire kit, must have been working on it while I distracted them. He threw the match at Gloria. The fuel ignited with a whoosh, flames engulfing her jacket. She screamed, a horrible high-pitched sound that echoed off the canyon walls. She dropped her knife and tore at her burning clothes, stumbling backward into the creek. The water doused the flames, but she kept screaming, her hands clutched to her chest. Earl and Emil stood frozen, shocked by the sudden violence. Jason used their hesitation to grab the knife Gloria had dropped and threw it to me. I caught it. Now I had 2 knives, one in each hand. "Back off," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "Back off or the next one goes on you." "You don't have any more fuel," Earl said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "Want to test that theory?" For a long moment, nobody moved. Gloria was still in the creek, whimpering, her hands and chest burned. The smell of singed hair and fabric filled the air. Emil looked at Earl, waiting for direction, but Earl seemed at a loss. This wasn't how their little game was supposed to go. Then, from above us, from the top of the waterfall, came a new sound. A voice calling out, multiple voices. And lights. Flashlight beams cutting through the darkness. Down here. Jason shouted at the top of his lungs. We're down here. Help. Earl's face transformed, fury replacing calculation. You're dead, he hissed at us. Both of you. If not tonight, then soon. We know your names. We'll find you. We'll. Earl Harris, this is Park Ranger Service. Step away from those campers. Now. More lights appeared at the top of the falls. I could see figures in uniform, see the shapes of what looked like rifles. The cavalry had arrived. Somehow, impossibly, help had come. Earl looked up at the Rangers, then back at us. His face twisted with rage. This isn't over. Then he and Emil were moving, leaving Gloria behind, scrambling up the canyon wall with the desperate speed of hunted animals. The Rangers shouted at them to stop, but they kept going, disappearing into the darkness like they'd never been there at all. I dropped the knives and fell to my knees, my entire body shaking. Jason limped over and collapsed beside me. We didn't speak, didn't do anything except breathe and try to process that we were alive, that we'd survived. The Rangers rappelled down to us, their professional voices asking if we were injured, if we could walk, if we'd been hurt. I answered automatically, not really hearing my own words. More Rangers arrived with medical equipment, with thermal blankets, with water and protein bars. Someone led Gloria away in handcuffs, her burns wrapped in gauze. She didn't resist. Didn't say anything. Just stared at us with empty, dead eyes as they took her up and out of the canyon. Later, much later, after we'd been extracted from the canyon and brought to the ranger station, after we'd given our statements and been checked by EMTs, I asked how they'd found us. The ranger in charge, a woman named Martinez, explained. Your emergency beacon. The one in your pack. It activated when you went over the waterfall, must have been triggered by the impact. We got the signal and dispatched immediately. The emergency beacon. I'd forgotten I even had it, a last-minute purchase at Jason's insistence before the trip. He'd said it was overkill, that we'd probably never need it. But he'd bought it anyway, because that's who Jason was. Careful. Prepared. The kind of person who saw danger coming and tried to prevent it. The kind of person I should have listened to from the very beginning. Martinez continued. We found your campsite abandoned, signs of a struggle. Tracked your route as best we could and heard shouting from the canyon. Lucky we got there when we did. Lucky. That was one word for it. I looked at Jason, who was sitting wrapped in a blanket with his ankle elevated, and felt a surge of emotion so intense I couldn't name it. Gratitude, guilt, relief, shame, all of it mixed together into something that made my throat tight and my eyes burn. They got away, Jason said quietly. Earl and the other one. They're still out there. Martinez nodded grimly. We have teams searching. We'll find them. But I could tell from her tone that she didn't really believe it. These woods were vast, and Earl and his companions knew them better than anyone. They'd survived out here for years, hunting people, evading detection. 2 more refugees escaping into the wilderness they called home. And somewhere out there, I knew, Earl was watching. Waiting. Planning. Some people never come back from the woods. And some who do carry the woods with them forever. The Rangers kept us at the station for hours, taking detailed statements, photographing our injuries, documenting everything. Jason's ankle was badly sprained, possibly fractured, They wanted him to go to the hospital, but he refused until we told them everything. Every detail about Earl, about Gloria and Emil, about the chase and the trap and the box canyon. Martinez recorded it all, her expression growing darker with each revelation. "We need to go back," I said when we'd finished. "Back to the canyon, to our campsite. There might be evidence, things that could help you find them." "We'll handle the investigation," Martinez said. "You two need medical attention and rest." But they're still out there. They could be hunting someone else right now. We have teams in the field. We've issued alerts to all campers in the area to evacuate immediately. And we're bringing in additional resources, search and rescue, K-9 units, helicopter surveillance at first light. She leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "You've done enough. You survived. You got one of them into custody. Now let us do our job." Jason touched my arm. "She's right, Mike. We need to get out of here." But I couldn't shake the feeling that leaving was wrong, that we should be out there searching, that every minute we sat here was another minute Earl and Emil had to escape or hurt someone else. Still, what could we do? We were exhausted, injured, barely holding ourselves together. We'd be liabilities in any search operation. An EMT drove us to the hospital in town. They x-rayed Jason's ankle, severe sprain, not broken, but he'd need crutches for at least 2 weeks. They treated my cracked ribs, my countless cuts and bruises, gave me painkillers I was too wired to take. By the time we were discharged, the sun was fully up, a beautiful clear morning that felt obscene after the horror of the night. Jason's girlfriend picked us up. She cried when she saw us, kept asking what happened, but neither of us could talk about it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. We just sat in the back of her car, staring out the windows at the passing landscape, still half expecting to see Earl's face appear at the glass. The police came to Jason's apartment that evening. More questions, more statements. They told us Gloria Nielsen was being held without bail, charged with attempted murder, kidnapping, and a list of other crimes. She wasn't talking, wasn't cooperating, just sat in her cell staring at the wall. They'd found evidence at the canyon, at what they believed was Earl's base camp, personal effects belonging to at least 12 different people. Licenses, credit cards, phones. Trophies. "We're working with missing persons databases," Detective Chen told us. "Trying to match the items to unsolved cases. It's going to take time." "What about Earl and Emil?" I asked. "Any sign of them?" Chen shook his head. "Nothing yet. It's like they vanished. But we'll find them. We have descriptions, we have Gloria in custody who might eventually cooperate. They can't hide forever." But I wasn't so sure. Earl had survived in those woods for years. He knew how to disappear, how to live off the grid. And now he was motivated not just by his sick games but by revenge. By the fact that Jason and I had escaped, had fought back, had cost him one of his companions. That night, alone in my own apartment for the first time since the trip, I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow looked like a person. I kept getting up to check that the doors were locked, that the windows were secure, that nobody was standing outside watching. Around 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You should have stayed in the woods, Mike. Would have been easier that way." My blood turned to ice. I called Detective Chen immediately, sent him screenshots. He said they'd trace the number, add extra patrols to my building, that I should consider staying with friends or family for a while. But I knew it wouldn't matter. Earl had found me. Maybe not physically, not yet, but he'd found me. And that message was a promise. He wasn't done with me. Wasn't done with either of us. I called Jason. He answered on the first ring, his voice rough with sleeplessness. "Did you get one too?" I asked. "Yeah. About an hour ago." Mine said, "The forest remembers. So do we." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I've been sitting here with a baseball bat, watching my door. Chen says they're going to trace the numbers, increase patrols. That's not going to stop him, Mike. You know that. If Earl wants to find us, he will. So what do we do?" There was a long silence. "Then, we live. We look over our shoulders. We don't go camping anymore. And we hope that eventually he gets caught or gives up or finds some other victims to obsess over. That's it. That's the plan. You got a better one?" I didn't. I stayed on the phone with Jason until the sun came up, both of us too afraid to be alone with our thoughts, too wired to sleep. When we finally hung up, I stood at my window watching the street below, looking for any sign of a gaunt man with hollow eyes watching back. The days blurred together after that. I called in sick to work, couldn't bring myself to leave my apartment. Jason was the same, holed up at his girlfriend's place, jumping at every sound. The police kept us updated. They'd found Earl's camp, a sophisticated setup with tarps and storage and what looked like a graveyard of gear from previous victims. But no sign of Earl or Emil themselves. A week after our escape, Detective Chen came to see me in person. His expression was grim. "We found something," he said. "At Earl's camp. A journal." He showed me photos on his tablet. Pages and pages of cramped handwriting, dates going back 5 years. Names, descriptions, methods. A detailed accounting of every person Earl and his companions had hunted. 23 confirmed victims, Chen said quietly. All campers or hikers who went missing on that trail over the past 5 years. Some of them we knew about, missing persons cases that went cold. Others we didn't. People who were traveling alone, who maybe nobody reported missing right away. 23 people. 23 lives stolen by 3 psychopaths playing their sick games in the wilderness. The number was incomprehensible. "There's more," Chen continued. "The journal, it talks about you and Jason. By name. He was planning this for a while. Your names appear in entries from 3 weeks ago, before you even went on your trip. My skin went cold. How? How did he know about us? We're still investigating. Best guess. He was monitoring social media, hiking forums, looking for potential targets. Maybe you posted about your trip plans somewhere. Or maybe he just saw you on the trail when you were scouting it last month. He had time to research you, learn your patterns. So this was all premeditated. He chose us specifically. It appears so. You and Jason fit his preferred profile, experienced enough to think you could handle yourselves, but not so experienced that you'd be paranoid. Compassionate enough to help someone in need. That was his selection criteria. He looked for good people and he exploited their decency. I felt sick. All of this, Earl's appearance at our camp, his story about lost friends, the entire nightmare, had been carefully orchestrated. We'd never had a chance. From the moment Earl decided we were his next targets, our fate was sealed. Except we'd escaped. Somehow, against all odds, we'd fought back and survived. And that, I realized, was what bothered Earl most. We'd broken his pattern. We'd refused to play our assigned role as victims. The journal also contains threats, Chen said carefully. Against you and Jason specifically. Detailed descriptions of what he plans to do when he finds you. I'm telling you this not to frighten you, but because you need to understand the level of danger. Earl Harris is obsessed with you too now. You're not just loose ends, you're the ones who got away. And according to his own writings, he's never let anyone get away before. So what happens now? Now we keep looking for him. We have his journal, his patterns, his preferred hunting grounds. We know more about him than we did a week ago. And every day he stays in hiding is another day he's not hurting anyone else. Chen paused. But I'm not going to lie to you, he's good at this. He's evaded detection for 5 years. He knows how to survive in the wilderness, how to move without leaving tracks. It could be a while before we find him. And in the meantime, you take precautions. You vary your routes, you stay in populated areas, you trust your instincts. And you keep living your life, because that's what survivors do. After Chen left, I sat alone in my apartment thinking about that word. Survivor. It should have felt empowering, triumphant. Instead, it felt hollow. Because yes, Jason and I had survived. But 23 others hadn't. And somewhere out there, Earl was planning his next move, his next hunt. My phone buzzed. Another text from an unknown number. Saw you talking to that detective. Didn't tell him about the creek behind your building, did you? The one with the trail that goes into the woods. See you soon. I looked out my window at the small creek that ran through the ravine behind my apartment complex. I'd walked that trail dozens of times, a pleasant little nature walk right in the city. I'd never thought of it as dangerous. I'd never thought about how someone could use it to approach my building unseen. I grabbed my keys and my phone and ran. I didn't stop running until I was at Jason's girlfriend's apartment, pounding on the door. They let me in, saw my face, and didn't ask questions. I showed them the text. Jason's face went pale. He knows where we live. He's been watching us. We need to leave, I said. Both of us. We need to go somewhere he can't find us. Where? Where can we go that he won't eventually track us down? I didn't have an answer. Earl had proven he could find us anywhere, could send messages from untraceable numbers, could watch us without being seen. We were trapped in a different kind of box canyon now, not one made of rock, but one made of fear and uncertainty. Jason's girlfriend, Sarah, spoke up for the first time. My parents have a place. In Arizona. Middle of the desert, middle of nowhere. Gated community, security, no forests for miles. You could stay there for a while. Both of you. We can't just run away, Jason said. We have jobs, lives, responsibilities. You have a stalker who's promised to kill you, Sarah said bluntly. Everything else can wait. She was right. We knew she was right. But the thought of abandoning everything, of letting Earl drive us from our homes, felt like letting him win. Like he'd succeeded in destroying our lives even without catching us. Still, what choice did we have? We packed that night. Essentials only, enough to last a few weeks while the police continued their search. Detective Chen approved of the plan, said he'd keep us updated on the investigation. Sarah arranged everything with her parents, who were understanding and kind and didn't ask too many questions. 2 days later, we were in Arizona. A small casita on the edge of a retirement community, surrounded by desert and cacti and relentless sunshine. It should have felt safe. It should have felt like escape. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we just traded one prison for another. That no matter how far we ran, Earl would be there in the shadows, waiting. Watching. Planning. The nightmares started that first week. I'd dream I was back in the Box Canyon, water closing over my head, Earl's face smiling down at me. Or I'd dream I was running through the forest, branches whipping at my face, footsteps behind me getting closer and closer until I woke up gasping. Jason had them too. I'd hear him crying out in the night, thrashing in his sleep. We didn't talk about it during the day. We'd sit by Sarah's parents' pool, trying to enjoy the sunshine, trying to pretend we were on vacation instead of in hiding. But the unspoken truth hung between us. Earl had won. He'd driven us from our homes, poisoned our peace, turned us into paranoid shells of ourselves. And he'd done it without even being there. 3 weeks into our exile, Detective Chen called with an update. They'd found Emil's body. He'd been discovered by a hiker about 15 miles from where we'd encountered him, dead from what appeared to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. A gun was found near the body, along with a note that simply said, "I'm sorry." "We think he couldn't live with what they'd done," Chen said. Or maybe he was afraid of getting caught. Either way, that's one less person to worry about. What about Earl? Still nothing. But we did find something interesting in Gloria's cell. She's been writing on the walls, messages, diagrams, what looks like map coordinates. We think she's trying to tell us where Earl might be hiding. She hasn't spoken out loud, but the wall writing is clearly intentional. Why would she give him up? Maybe she blames him for how things turned out. Maybe she's angry he left her behind. Or maybe, Chen paused. Maybe she wants him to get caught because she knows what he's capable of and she's afraid of him too. The coordinates led searchers to another camp, more evidence, more trophies from victims. But still no Earl. It was like he'd become a ghost, existing everywhere and nowhere at once. Another month passed. Then another. The text stopped coming, which somehow made things worse. At least when Earl was taunting us, we knew he was focused on his messages instead of actually hunting us. The silence felt ominous, pregnant with threat. Jason started seeing a therapist. I should have too, but I couldn't bring myself to talk about what happened, couldn't put words to the fear that had become my constant companion. Sarah was patient with both of us, understanding in a way I didn't deserve. But I could see the strain it put on her and Jason's relationship. The way he'd flinch when she touched him unexpectedly. The way he couldn't enjoy anything, couldn't be present, always watching the doors and windows. I'd done this to him. My need to help Earl, my refusal to listen to Jason's warnings, had destroyed his sense of safety. Had destroyed both of our lives. For months after our escape, Detective Chen called again. His voice was different this time, excited, urgent. We got him. Earl Harris is in custody. I couldn't speak. Couldn't process what he was saying. Jason, listening on speakerphone, grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. How? Jason managed to ask. He tried to abduct another camper. Solo hiker, young woman, up in Oregon. But she fought back, pepper sprayed him and ran. Rangers responded to her emergency beacon and found him in the area, still partially blinded. He tried to run but they had dogs. They tracked him down within hours. Is she okay? The woman. Shaken up but unharmed. She'd heard about your case, actually. Read about it online. When Earl approached her with a story about needing help, she immediately knew something was wrong. Your experience saved her life. The irony wasn't lost on me. We'd been victims of Earl's predation, but our story had warned someone else, had given them the knowledge to fight back. One life saved didn't make up for 23 lost, but it was something. What happens now? I asked. Now he goes to trial. We have overwhelming evidence, the journal, the trophies, Gloria's testimony, your statements, the attempted abduction in Oregon. He's never seeing freedom again. After Chen hung up, Jason and I sat in silence. We should have felt relief. We should have felt joy that our ordeal was over, that we could go home, that we could start rebuilding our lives. Instead, we felt nothing. Just a numb emptiness where terror had lived for so long. It's over, Jason said finally. It's actually over. Yeah. So why doesn't it feel over? I looked at my best friend, this person I'd known for years, who'd stood by me through everything, who'd saved my life multiple times during that nightmare night. And I saw what the experience had done to him. The hollowness in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way he still scanned every room looking for threats. Because it'll never really be over, I said quietly. We survived the forest. But the forest is still inside us. Jason nodded slowly. I think our friendship might be over too. The words hurt more than any physical injury I'd sustained. What? I can't look at you without remembering that night. Without remembering that I told you not to help him and you did anyway. Without remembering that your need to be the good guy almost got us killed. His voice cracked. I know it's not fair. I know you were just trying to do the right thing. But every time I see you, I'm back in those woods. And I can't live like that. Jason. I need time. Maybe a lot of time. Maybe forever. I don't know. But right now, I need space from you. From all of this. He stood up and walked inside, leaving me alone by the pool. And I understood, even as my heart broke, that this was the final casualty of Earl Harris's hunt. Not our lives, but our friendship. The trust we'd built over years, shattered in a single night. Some people never come back from the woods. And some who do are never the same. I flew home the next day. Returned to my apartment, to my job, to my life. Detective Chen arranged for extra security, but I didn't really need it anymore. Earl was in custody. Emil was dead. Gloria would spend the rest of her life in prison. We were safe. But I still checked the locks 3 times before bed. Still woke up in the middle of the night convinced I heard footsteps. Still avoided forests, parks, anywhere with too many trees and not enough people. The trial happened 6 months later. I testified, reliving every moment of that night in excruciating detail. Earl sat at the defense table, expressionless, barely looking at me. Whatever fire had driven him to hunt, whatever sick need had sustained him for years, seemed to have burned out. He looked small, diminished, ordinary. Just a broken man who'd done terrible things. He was convicted on all counts. 23 counts of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, dozens of other charges. The judge sentenced him to life without possibility of parole. Multiple consecutive life sentences, actually, ensuring he'd die in prison. I waited for the relief to come. The sense of justice, of closure. But all I felt was tired. Jason didn't come to the trial. We hadn't spoken since Arizona. I'd tried reaching out a few times, but he never responded. Sarah told me he was doing better, that the therapy was helping, that he was trying to move forward with his life. A life that didn't include me. 6 months after the trial, a year after our nightmare, I received a package. No return address, just my name and apartment number. Inside was a letter. Mike, I've been in therapy for a while now. Working through everything that happened. And my therapist thinks I need closure with you, not for your sake, but for mine. So here it is. I don't blame you anymore. I understand you were trying to do what you thought was right. I understand that any of us could have made the same choice in that moment. I understand that Earl Harris is responsible for what happened, not you. It's happening again. We don't know that. They could legitimately be lost. Could be injured somewhere we haven't searched yet. Could be. 3 experienced campers with proper equipment, all vanishing without a trace. On the exact same trail. My voice was rising. You know what this is. You know. Chen was quiet for a moment. We're investigating all possibilities. The others Earl mentioned in his journal. You need to find them. You need to. Mike, I need you to listen to me. We have been investigating. For over a year we've been following up on every lead, every hint in that journal. And we've found nothing. No evidence of any other organized group. Earl could have been fantasizing. Or lying. Or just trying to seem more important than he was. Or he was telling the truth and there are more of them out there. Even if there are, we can't prove it. We can't arrest people based on speculation. We need evidence, and right now we don't have any. He sighed. Look, I know this is hard. I know you want answers. But sometimes people just get lost in the wilderness. It's tragic, but it happens. After we hung up, I sat staring at my laptop screen. At the photos of 3 smiling young people who'd probably thought they were just going on an adventure. Who'd probably been excited, maybe a little nervous, but confident in their abilities. Just like Jason and I had been. I clicked through to the comments section of the article. Most were sympathetic, offering prayers and condolences. But one caught my eye. My brother went missing on this same trail 3 years ago. They told us it was an accident too. That he probably fell or got lost. But I never believed it. He was too experienced. Too careful. Something happened to him. Something bad. 3 years ago. Right in the middle of when Earl and his companions were actively hunting. Another victim they'd never found, never connected to the case. I scrolled through more comments. Found another. I was on that trail last summer. Ran into a group of people who gave me weird vibes. They were way too interested in where I was going, if I was alone, when I was planning to leave. I got scared and hiked out early. Reading this makes me think I made the right choice. Last summer. Months after Earl was arrested. After Emil died. After Gloria was imprisoned. I kept scrolling. More stories. More near misses. More disappearances that had been written off as accidents. The pattern was impossible to ignore once you knew to look for it. Something was still happening in those woods. Maybe not Earl's group specifically, but something. Someone. I opened a new browser tab and started searching. Missing persons cases in wilderness areas across the Pacific Northwest. Focused on cases where the victim was experienced, properly equipped, and simply vanished. Where search efforts found no trace. The list was longer than I wanted to believe. Dozens of cases over the past decade. Maybe more. Some had obvious explanations, areas known for dangerous terrain, bad weather, avalanche risk. But others, like the 3 recent disappearances, had no clear cause. Just experienced campers who walked into the wilderness and never came back. I created a spreadsheet. Date, location, victim details, circumstances, outcome. Started plotting them on a map. Looked for patterns, clusters, areas with higher concentrations of unexplained disappearances. And I found them. Multiple hotspots across Washington, Oregon, Montana, and Northern California. Areas where the disappearance rate was significantly higher than could be explained by accident alone. Areas that, according to Earl's journal, he and his companions had visited over the years. I spent the entire night on this research, my therapist's warnings about obsessive behavior forgotten. By dawn, I had a list of 17 cases that fit the profile. 17 people who'd vanished in the past 5 years under circumstances eerily similar to what almost happened to Jason and me. 17 people who might have been murdered while Earl Harris sat in prison claiming credit for only 23 kills. I called Chen again. Sent him my spreadsheet, my map, my notes. He promised to look into it, but I could hear the skepticism in his voice. He thought I was traumatized, obsessive, seeing patterns where none existed. Maybe I was. But I didn't think so. 2 days later, Chen called back. We looked into your list. Most of those cases have reasonable explanations. But... He paused. There are 3 that are concerning. 3 where the circumstances are very similar to your case. And they all happened after Earl was arrested. So I was right. You might be right that something happened to those people. But that doesn't mean it's connected to Earl's group. Could be completely unrelated. Or it could be exactly what Earl hinted at in his journal. Other groups. Other hunters. Mike, you can't go down this road. You can't make this your mission. You need to focus on healing, on moving forward. Let us handle the investigation. But I couldn't let it go. Because somewhere out there, 3 young people were probably dead or dying. And if I'd learned anything from my experience, it was that sometimes the authorities didn't know. Sometimes they missed things. Sometimes the monsters were cleverer than anyone gave them credit for. I started reaching out to the families of the missing. Not all of them, I didn't want to cause unnecessary pain. But the 3 cases Chen had flagged as concerning. I introduced myself carefully, explained who I was, what had happened to me. Asked if they'd be willing to talk about their loved ones' disappearances. 2 of them hung up on me. Didn't want to talk to some stranger dredging up painful memories. But the 3rd, the sister of a man named David Krakowski who disappeared in Montana 2 months after Earl's arrest, she agreed to meet. Her name was Elena. We met at a coffee shop in Seattle, neutral territory. She was younger than me, maybe 25, with her brother's same dark eyes according to the photos she showed me. The police said David fell, she told me, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee she wasn't drinking. There's a cliff near where his campsite was found. They think he went over the edge. But they never found his body. Never found any sign that he actually fell. What do you think happened? I think something scared him. His campsite was abandoned, tent still set up, gear scattered around. His phone was there, his wallet, everything except his pack. Like he grabbed it and ran. She looked at me with hollow eyes. The police said maybe a bear scared him. But David had camped his whole life. He knew how to handle bears. He wouldn't have panicked like that. Did they find anything else? Any evidence of other people in the area? That's the thing. They found footprints. Multiple sets. The police said they were from the search team, but David's girlfriend swore they were there before the search started. She's the one who found the campsite when he didn't check in. She said she saw the footprints then, leading away into the woods. Multiple sets. At least 3 different people. Maybe more. Elena leaned forward. Mr. Rhodes, my brother was murdered. I know it. I feel it. But no one believes me. They think I'm in denial, that I can't accept he had an accident. But after hearing your story, after reading about what happened to you and your friend, I know I'm right. Someone killed David. And they're still out there. I wanted to tell her she was wrong. That her brother probably had fallen, that the footprints had a reasonable explanation, that monsters like Earl Harris were rare and we'd caught ours and everything was fine now. But I couldn't. Because I knew she was right. Over the next few months, I became obsessed. Spent every free moment researching, compiling data, reaching out to families, mapping disappearances. My new job suffered. My therapy appointments became argumentative as my therapist tried to convince me to let go, to stop fixating, to move on with my life. But how could I? How could I live normally knowing that people were still dying, that the pattern Earl and his companions had started might be continuing, that authorities were writing off as accidents what were actually murders? I tried reaching out to Jason once. Sent him an email with my research, thinking maybe this could bring us back together. A shared mission. A way to turn our trauma into something meaningful. He never responded. Sarah eventually replied on his behalf, asking me politely to stop contacting them. Jason was doing better, she said. He'd moved on. He didn't want to be pulled back into that nightmare. I understood. But I couldn't do the same. Couldn't move on. Couldn't forget. It was a year and 8 months after our escape when I got another Google alert. This one made my blood run cold. Escaped inmate alert, Earl Harris missing from transport vehicle. The article was short, clinical. Harris had been in transport from his prison to a hospital for a medical appointment. There'd been an accident, another vehicle had struck the transport van, causing it to crash. In the chaos, Harris had somehow escaped his restraints and fled into nearby woods. A massive manhunt was underway. That had been 6 hours ago. And Earl Harris had a 6-hour head start in terrain he knew how to navigate better than anyone. I called Chen. Got his voicemail. Called again. And again. Finally he picked up. I know, he said before I could speak. I've been on the phone for hours. Every law enforcement agency in 3 states is looking for him. He's gone, isn't he? He's already in the wilderness somewhere you'll never find him. We'll find him. Like you found him the first time. When he spent 5 years killing people before we stumbled onto him by accident. Chen didn't respond. Because we both knew I was right. Earl Harris knew how to disappear. Knew how to survive. And now he was free, angry, and had scores to settle. With me. With Jason. With everyone who'd put him in prison. I hung up and immediately called Jason. Got his voicemail. Jason, it's Mike. Earl escaped. He's in the wind. You need to take Sarah and go somewhere safe. Don't tell anyone where. Just go. Please. Call me when you get this. He didn't call back. I texted. Texted Sarah. Got nothing. The silence was terrifying. I spent that night awake, watching the news, refreshing the search for updates. By morning, there was still no sign of Earl. But there was another update that made my stomach drop. Vehicle found burning in remote area, 2 bodies inside. The article mentioned a Honda Civic found in the woods about 50 miles from where Earl had escaped. The license plate traced back to a couple from Portland who'd been reported missing. Preliminary investigation suggested foul play. 50 miles. That was walking distance for Earl. Walking distance to where he might have encountered an innocent couple whose only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The bodies were too badly burned to identify immediately. Would take days, maybe weeks, for forensic results. In the comments section of the article, someone had posted a photo. A grainy, distant shot of something carved into a tree near where the vehicle was found. It was text, crude but legible, they never came back. Earl's message. His signature. His promise. He wasn't just escaping. He was starting over. Building a new hunting ground. And this time, he knew exactly how to avoid getting caught. I stared at that photo for hours. At those words carved into bark. Words that had become my reality, my nightmare, my constant truth. Some people never came back from those woods. And now Earl was back in them, free to hunt again. I opened my laptop. Looked at my spreadsheet of disappearances, my map of hotspots, my notes and theories and evidence. All of it useless. All of it too late. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. Hello, Mike. Earl's voice. Hoarse but unmistakable. Miss me? I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. I've been thinking about you. About Jason. About what I'm going to do when I find you. He paused. Did you like my message? The burned car. That's nothing compared to what I have planned. But I thought you should know, I'm free now. And I'm coming for you. Maybe not today. Maybe not this year. But eventually. Because I'm patient. Because I'm good at this. And because you two are the only ones who ever got away. The police will find you. He laughed. No, they won't. They couldn't find me for 5 years when they didn't even know to look. You think they'll find me now that I know they're searching? I'll be a ghost, Mike. A legend. The killer who vanished into the wilderness. You'll make a mistake. Everyone does. Maybe. Or maybe I'll perfect my craft. Maybe those 3 campers who went missing while I was in prison, maybe that was me too, somehow. Maybe I have followers now, people who learn from me, who carry on my work. His voice dropped to a whisper. Maybe I'm everywhere, Mike. In every shadow, every forest, every dark trail. Maybe you'll never be safe again. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, Earl's words echoing in my mind. Maybe he was right. Maybe I'd never be safe again. Maybe Jason wouldn't either. Maybe Earl had won after all, not by killing us but by destroying any peace we might have found. Or maybe not. I looked at my computer screen. At my research. At the evidence no one else had connected. At the pattern I'd spent months documenting. Earl thought he was a ghost. Thought he was untouchable. But I knew his methods. Knew how he thought. Knew the signs to look for. And I wasn't going to run anymore. Wasn't going to hide and wait for him to find me. I was going to find him first. Some people never came back from the woods. I'd come back once. And now I was going back in. Not as prey this time. As a hunter. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. And this time, I knew the rules. Let me know your opinion about the story in the comments below. And make sure you're subscribed.